Eventually it's going to show me that I'm good. Okay. All right, we're back. We are COMP123 in the summer 2019 semester, and it is week 12 now. Oh my gosh, things pass so fast, right? Couple of announcements for the tests. We know that next Monday, first of all, is a holiday. It's a civic holiday, so there won't be any class. Make sure that you do not come on Monday. So, why is that bad? It's bad because the stuff that I would normally give you and record on Monday, not going to record, right? So chances are, if I can, what I might do is record the stuff that you need on Monday, on Friday, so that you have everything you need, so you won't miss the class. You won't miss that part, okay? Because that's coming up on Monday. So Friday's work, if there's anything new this Friday, which is going into week 13, I'm going to record it on Friday. So Friday I'm going to cover things like, between Wednesday and Friday I'm going to cover test-driven development with C#, so testing. How do I do unit testing and all that kind of stuff, and we're going to record things on Friday. On Wednesday we're going to be talking about the entity framework, and how do I use the entity framework to connect to my database instead of using a standard data set with a data grid view. So kind of a new thing. That's what's happening this week. And then next week is going to be the last week that you're going to have a chance to ask questions, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to do a review for your test on Monday the 12th. Okay, please be here for that day. Monday the 12th is a very important day. If you're not here on Monday the 12th, and I'll be doing the review for section A on Friday, the Friday before, which is next Friday, right? So next Friday will be the review for the test for section A, and for you guys for section B and C. I'm going to be taking care of you guys on Monday, so please do not miss Monday the 12th. Not this Monday coming up, but the following Monday, like 2 weeks from now. All right. So that'll be week 14. So what am I going to do on that Monday? I'm going to tell you what's on the test. I'm telling you, right? I'm also going to build up one part of the files that you need for Wednesday. Your test will be Wednesday the 14th. That'll be your test, right? It'll be 100 minutes, right? In 100 minutes, you're going to have some things that I'm going to be asking you to do, probably 4 to 5 tasks that I'm going to ask you to do. It's going to be based on the files that I've given you. Chances, things that I could cover, and it's going to be a little bit different for each one of you because everyone's going to have a slightly different test, right? I'm going to cover things like saving and loading, which we've been covering, right? Database access, which we covered. Link, which we covered. Moving from one form to the other, which we've covered. All these things that we've covered in class and that are on your assignment number 4 and number 5 are all fair game. Anything that I've covered in class. If there's something I haven't covered, it's not going to be on your test. So anything from another section, like let's say from some other class, they're going to have a different kind of test. Maybe they're going to have multiple choice true false. That's not me. I don't do multiple choice true false. Typically, I usually do practical tests, and that's what's happening for your test, which is going to be on the 14th of August. 16th of August is your assignment 5. That's when it's due. There's no extensions because that's the final day of class and the final day of semester. So please make sure that you guys get everything in on or well before the 16th, which I recommend. All right? Some people didn't get their assignment 4 done on time. They called me, they did all kinds of stuff, they sent me text messages, my computer blew up, my hard drive didn't work, I don't have access to GitHub, all on Friday, by the way, right? Which I anticipated. So those people, I'm so sorry, but not because I want to be mean, I don't want to be mean, I know things happen, but this is why we have GitHub. GitHub backs up what you're doing on your files. That means you're released. If something goes wrong, you can always use GitHub as a backup. That was one of the reasons why we use GitHub. 3 reasons, right? Backup, collaboration is the other one, right? And version control, to basically keep track of all your versions on GitHub. So if your machine blew up, it's okay if you're working with GitHub. But if you just use GitHub as a final thing, Tom needs GitHub, let's put it up on GitHub, then it's no good, right? And that's what probably happened to these people, not one person, people. And people also submitted late. Professor, I don't know why, but I can't submit on eCentennial, I was busy. everyone's submitting at the same time. I told you submit on time, right? So if you're one of those people who submitted late, I don't know what I can do for you. I'm going to give you marks, but you'll have a discount. A haircut is like, well, you're going to get a haircut on your marks, right? That's what's going to happen. All right, on that, so for the final test, it's going to be based on assignment 4 and 5, and you need to do that on your own. I'm going to allow you to have open access to internet, to GitHub, your files, my files, your assignment 4, your assignment 5. No YouTube, no video watching, like I mentioned before. I'm telling you that in advance. And no communication tools, so no Slack, Discord, texting, messaging, emailing other people, that kind of stuff. If I see that happening, you're going to get a 0. I'm going to ask you to leave. You have to be physically present, and please bring your student ID for that day, because I'm going to ask you for it. So it can't be some random person that's writing your test. It's going to be you, right? So please make sure you come in for that day. And especially from Monday the 14th, for those people that are here, and Friday the, what does that be? The Friday before, I don't know, this next Friday, right? So not this Friday, but next Friday, which will be the 9th. Yeah? 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th? I think so, right? Yeah, because it'll be this Friday for the thing, or it will be the following Friday. Not 2nd, it'll be, 2nd is this Friday, so next Friday, the 9th. Yeah, the 9th. All right, so that's when I'll be doing the reviews for your final test. And in that review, like I said, I will be giving you a framework we're going to be working together with, so you won't be blind. I don't want you to come into your test on Wednesday and never seen this thing before, right? That's not fair. So I'm going to give it to you a couple days before. And if you don't have it, or if you've never looked at it, then Wednesday is going to be a very tough exam for you. I don't want that to happen. So we're going to work with the stuff on Monday. And it'll be actually reviewed, too. I'll show you how to go from one thing to the other. I'm going to ask you some stuff. And I might even show you part of the exam. One thing I will not be doing for the Monday for the review and the Friday review, for the people who are in Section A, I will not be recording it. You have to be here physically. Why? I'm not going to put my exam on the internet, right? Because it's going to be different every single time. So please make sure you attend. It's an important time to attend, because if you don't, I try not to make things mandatory, but I recommend attendance on Monday the 12th for you guys, and on Friday the 9th for Section A. Sorry? What are you asking for? Attend both. On the thread, like 2 days before exam, that's why. Yeah, you can attend both if you really want to. Attend the Friday morning. It'll be 8:30 in the morning on Friday the 9th, right? So some people won't be able to do it. That's fine. I won't be recording it, but I'll give you a chance to do it. What I'm going to be giving you is every group, A, B, C, will have its own version of the exam, because we're going to be building it together, right? So there isn't going to be a chance for you to use somebody else's exam or whatever. Your exam is going to be the one I'm going to build with you. You're going to know what it is. So we'll build it on the day we're together for doing our stuff. I'll have a template that we're going to work from starting on when we come in. So the template's going to be similar for all groups. So you won't start from scratch. I'll give you some stuff, right? But then we're going to be building with it. I'll talk about some things that are going to be required, some review. We'll talk about some concepts and stuff, and then that'll be your review day. But you'll see what I'm asking for. It won't be like you'll be looking at it going, what is it? What is this? I don't understand, right? I'll explain everything. Okay, but today, let's get to the stuff that we want to talk about today. I'll be talking more about the tests next week, and I'll keep talking about it every single time we're together, so no one's blindsided. I don't want anyone to be afraid. It's nothing that you haven't seen. I'm going to be covering the same concepts you have on assignment 4 and 5. All right? Let's get to this thing. So, yes, let's go to what we did before. So last day, I'm just going to bring up Visual Studio here. Let's bring up your files so that you guys are section C, right? So let's bring up C. Here you guys are. So here's section C. So last we left off, we had this. We had, when we launched our app, we had this little example app, right? And we have this. It accesses the database. What we can do is we can click save, and it doesn't give us any feedback. That's bad, right? And then what we do is, if I go next, I can see that next we'll have Tom, right? And then we have this little funny thing happening where we have this little cycling thing. The reason why this is happening is because of an error in our code. Let's fix that error. So in our program.cs, let's go there. Please tell me if there's any problems with this. It looks like we're good, right? Notice that start form has been instantiated here, and I'm starting with start form. Okay, so this is the same way. So far, so good. I've got student info form, about form, and main form, and this is where we're going with all this stuff. That's where we started off. But the problem that we have is when I run my application, I don't have control. The user does not have control of what he's saving or she's saving, and there's no feedback. The user's not getting feedback on, hey, here's my form, and you've saved everything. Nothing's saying that you saved everything. So we got to talk about how to do that. So first things first, let's talk about feedback. One thing I covered in the other sections, which I didn't have a chance to cover with you guys, is the idea of giving feedback to the user in the form of a message box. So what is a message box? Let's go to the main form code. And let me talk about some of the stuff we've done here, okay? So here's 11C. We have our exit toolstrip menu item. We have our about and help toolstrip button. Our main form load, which loads up the data set. That's what we do here. Our next button takes us to the next form, student info form show. That's what it does, and hides this one. And then we have this student data grid view selection change. When the selection changes, we highlight everything, right? We talked about this, right? And we load up our student class. We load it up with stuff from the cells. That's what we're doing here, right? And then finally, when we save, we have this. We have our using statement, and we have a specific thing we go to, students.txt. Let's make some changes to this. So again, when we do our stream reader and stream writer, right, we want to use a using statement because the using statement basically says that anything that's in this scope is going to live and die. The stream writer is going to live and die within this scope. We want to do that. Except I want to change this. There's another way to do this, which I like more. I'm just going to cut this out for now. And I talked about this in the other classes. It's file.open. I want to use file.open. It gives us a couple of other options. One is the path, which is student.txt, and the other one is the file mode. So let's go file mode, dot, and then if I'm saving, I want to create. Okay? So that's what this does. So student.txt, I use file mode, and I do this. I need one more bracket here. That's why it's giving me an error. The rest stuff is okay. So here is when I open the stream. So open the stream for writing. That's what I'm doing here. And then in this part of the stream, so write content, and this is, by the way, string type stuff to the file. That's what I'm doing with these four lines here. Okay, so I'm writing stuff out as strings, write line. One thing to note is that this write line here is writing this one out as a, what is ID? Integer, right? So I'm writing it as an integer, and I recommend, my friends, we write everything out as a string, which means I'm going to take this and go toString. So a couple of differences here, right? So it's going to be writing it out as a string, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some cleanup. So here's my cleanup. What does cleanup pertain to? It says I want to close up my stream and I want to dispose of the memory. That's what I want to do. So close and dispose. And that is my saving operations. Okay, so all I've done is change my file open to this. I've included this part here. It gives me more control a little bit. And by the way, I'm setting you up for binary reading and binary writing, which is what we're going to need to do in this way. So then after we go here, we click next and we go to our student info form. My student info form does reading, right? So here in a try catch block, what we're going to do is we're going to say something like open the stream for reading. And notice I did it properly here. I have a file open. A file open. I kind of did this. And then we're reading everything in, and we're reading it in as a integer. That's what we're reading it in as an integer. And then I'm cleaning things up. So cleanup, and this part here is read from the file. That's what this does. Read from the file. And we're doing it in a try-catch block, right, where I do a debug.writeLine. Well, wouldn't it be nice if we can do this debugging and everything else somewhere else? And we can. There's a construct in Windows Forms called message box. A message box. So if I go back to my main form, wouldn't it be nice when I'm done saving that I have a message box that comes up? How does it look? I can go to, so again, show or give feedback to the user, give feedback to the user that the file has been saved. You want to be able to do that because otherwise you get nothing. The user doesn't know anything that the file's been saved. And we can use a message box. It's a standard thing that's part of C#'s Windows Forms. It goes like this. Message box dot show. And then there's some options. One is we can say something like file saved. Right? We could do this, just a simple thing like this. And what this looks like is like an alert from JavaScript. Okay? Now, guys and girls, alerts from JavaScript are bad. All right? Why? They disrupt the flow of your program. Right? Program flow is disrupted. They take control of your program. Okay? So if you're using things in JavaScript, I always say like alerts, I would never use them, ever, unless you're debugging. Or there's a couple more options. One of them is you're saving or you're closing up your application. You can say something like, are you sure you want to close? That's a good use for an alert. Or in this case, a message box. The other one is you're deleting. Are you sure you want to delete this record? That's a good use of a message box, right? Or I want to give feedback to the user. I want to make sure that they know that their file's been saved, like this, right? So this is what I'm doing, messagebox.show. Let's run this thing and see how it works. So welcome to my app, right? And then if I save now, this Tom guy, save him, notice it says file saved. So I get feedback. This is what this little alert box looks like. But guess what? I can't move on. I can't move on because my message box is modal. That's what it is. What's modal mean? It means it stops the operation. So this is a modal form. That's what it means. That's how it's spelled. Modal, not modeless. Modeless means it allows you to have you can have multiple forms up at the same time, and you can switch from one form to the other. A modal form, you must deal with that form first before you move on. Okay, and we're going to show you another one today, which is file save dialog and open file dialog. We're going to do those things too. Now, messagebox.show has several options. Let's talk about what they are. So remember that you can certainly do just the file saved. You can also do this. You can say that I want a title bar. So saving files, saving my file, that's and the title bar, you can put that in. You can also use some message box buttons. If, let's say, for example, I want to have, I can have a different way of showing my message box. I can have OK cancel as an example, right? Or I can have yes, no, or I can just have OK or just yes, right? So let's say OK. And then I can also include message box icons, right? Which is my message box icon. I'm going to put this in the bottom, which I want to give information. So those are other options you can include with your message box. I'm just putting them on the other line so you can see it. So what does this do? That's why it makes message box one of the most valuable little things, little tools you can use for debugging purposes, as well as for giving feedback to the user, right? In limited quantities. Let's try this again. So if I do it again, now if I press save, you can see that the message box comes up with a little icon, I, for info. It says, it has a title bar, saving file. It says file saved. I press my OK button and I'm good to go. Okay, that's my message box. If I have a message box there, then I can certainly have a message box in my student info form. Instead of, if there's an error, putting it out to the debugger, I can do this too, but I want to kind of put a message box to output it there too. I can say, okay, message box dot show, and then it should be something like error, like it says up there. Let's just do the same thing. Error plus exception.message. So I want to have that. Plus, I want to say error of my title bar, and I can say that I have my message box buttons. It's going to be some kind of OK button. And my message box icon is definitely going to be an error icon, this one. So I give more feedback to the user again. There we go. So the error icon actually has a little error symbol that comes up. So if I have an error somehow, I can certainly do this. This debugs to the output window, which is right here. And this one actually outputs to the user. So a double output showing that there's an error. Okay? Message box is very, very useful. Okay, but still we haven't handled the problem that we have, which is we're hard coding our file. We never want to hard code our files. We want to give our user a chance to pick their file. And there's something called the it's kind of standard dialog boxes. Let me just pull this up. So again, from last week's PowerPoint on data files, I'm pulling up that PowerPoint. I'm going to scroll down to where we have common file dialog box on page 27. So starting on page 28, it talks about what an open file dialog box is, and it has some options, but really what it looks like is this. You've seen it a million times. Every time you open and save a file in Microsoft, they use something that's similar to this, an open file dialog box. And sure, we can create this ourselves. We can make our own open file dialog box and close file or save file dialog, but why? It's already been done for us, and it works good. Use Microsoft's is my recommendation in this case. So how does this work? Let's go back to our code. The way this works is, if I go back to my main form, right, designer, on my toolbox, here's my toolbox, I have these common dialogs. I have font dialog and color dialog. We're not going to use those today, but I do have open file dialog and save file dialog. It's in my components in my toolbox, right? So I want to drag open file dialog and save file dialog onto the form like this. Just drag it in there. Both of those. And what it does is it creates more stuff inside the gutter. You can put these inside your component area. That's really what it is too. In the component area, you can have as many of these components as you need for your application, for this particular form. Alright, so we have our dialogues, and these doesn't make any sense. Save file dialog and open file dialog 1. Let's rename these. I want to rename this one student save file dialog. Let's do that. So student save file dialog. We'll name it the right way. Here it is. And I'll call this the student open file dialog. While we're at it, since we're renaming, we'll just do it right here and get it done. Student open file dialog. Now again, different naming conventions could be okay for this one. You might think of other things you want to do. That's fine, as long as it makes more sense. Now, the great thing about this is you have the ability to configure some stuff here, but we're going to do it all with code this time around. Alright? What I want to do is my student open file dialog I want to configure first. So I'm going to do this inside of the mainform.cs. Alright, so instead of having a hard-coded student.txt file, I want to be able to have some options for the user so they can choose whatever file name they want. Alright? So the way it would work is like this. First, I want to configure the file dialog, whether it's open file dialog or save file dialog. Doesn't matter. I want to configure it. And then I want to open the file dialog. Okay? Now, whatever output I get from the file dialog, I want to kind of put into my file name. So let's configure it first. Here's my first configuration. What's the default file name I want to use? So I can say something like this. Student save file dialog dot file name is equal to, I don't know, we'll call it the same thing, student.txt. That's the default file name. If the person doesn't enter a file name, they'll have this one. Okay? Next, the default directory, or what we like to call the initial directory. So student save file dialog, right? And we'll say initial directory. Initial directory means what folder is your file dialog going to look into. We can use directory dot get current directory to know where we are, and usually that'll put us inside the bin debug folder of our application. That's what it does. or in the case of a release, in our bin release folder. Okay, next, we also want to configure student save file dialog, our filter. And what is a filter? Filter kind of looks like this filter, and you'll see this before. You have a little pull down menu that comes up, and the pull down menu is what kind of files do you want to look for? Text files, all files, binary files, tom files, what are they, right? And then you can configure your filter this way. And the way you do that is it's a string file that you put in here. So again, you say something like this. You say my filter is equal to a string, and again you want to say text files. You want to give the user of what a sense of what they look like, text files, and then you use the pipe character. So it's a shift backslash, the pipe character, and then star.txt. That's one option. Or we can use all files, right? And again, we go star.star, followed by the pipe character, and then star.star. I made a mistake. This should be without the brackets over here. Let's get rid of the brackets. Now that I'm looking at this, I know it. All right, and then close it out. So what this is like is a regular expression. It's kind of like a regular expression. What it does is it says, okay, I want to filter out anything but star.txt, any txt files. Or I want to look at all files, one of those two things. So we must have a filter. Next, we want to open the file dialog, but we want to store the result of the open inside of result variable. Why? What if the user presses cancel? I want to save, but then he says, nah, I don't feel like saving right now. That's an option. That can happen. So we need to return the result somewhere where we can have access to it. So we're going to say var result is equal to, again, student save file dialog dot show dialog. And the show dialog is going to bring up the window. It's going to show the dialog box that comes up, right? And then we're going to say something like this. If my result is not equal to dialog result dot cancel, so if it's not a cancel result, if it's anything else, the user saved everything, then only then do I want to do all of this. So take all this stuff, right? I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to put this in here. So I'm saying, hey, don't save the file until I know the user wants to save it. And then let's not use student.txt as the file name. We'll make it so that it is student save dialog, save file dialog dot file name, whatever the file name that was chosen. Does that make sense? So again, first part, configure the file dialog. Actually, first part, drag the file dialog onto your project, onto your form, right? Which we did, into the gutter, right? Make sure the name is spelt right. Then configure it. Make some changes to initial directory, file name, and filter, right? And then open the file dialog. And then, depending on what the result is, if it's a positive result, if it's a save, then save the file. If not, don't do anything. Don't save the file at all. It's been canceled. Let's see how this looks. So again, we open up my file. If I did everything properly, it's going to bring me here. I'm going to click this save button. And now the save file dialog is going to come up. Hey, look, I have text files that look here. And if I go all files, it should see my student.txt. There's a problem, and it always happens with my filter. Somehow my filter is not working. Let's fix it. And by the way, guys, this is a really silly thing that happens with the filter property. It has to do with this, with the spacing. So if you take away this space, I'm not joking, right? And if I go back and run it again, it's got to be written in a very specific way, then it should work now. If I press save, you should see the student. That one little space changed my search, and I should be able to see that. If I press all, you can see this. If I press this, and this is what the filter does, this thing right here, save as type. It changes this option for you. Okay? Alright, I can choose my student. I want to override, but in this case, my name is Tom, so maybe I can save it as tom.txt. Let's do that. So Tom, right? And then click save. Hey, file saved, it says. Let's check to see if that worked. So I'm going to close this down for now. and I'm going to go back to my Solution Explorer. I'm going to right-click on my project and go Open File in File Explorer, which is going to go to the bin debug folder, and I can see now that I have a tom.txt file, so it did it. I'm going to open it in my favorite editor, which is Visual Studio Code. You can use whatever editor you want. And now we should see Tom stuff. All right? Make sense? So that is the example of a save file dialog. File dialog, again, common element. That's what it is. It's made by Microsoft to make the user experience similar between different applications. All right? All right, this is great. Let's add this to GitHub. So I'm going to go to my Team Explorer, and I'm going to go to Changes, and you can see that I made a bunch of changes, but the one I really care about for changes is my Save File Dialog support. I'm going to say that added Save File Dialog support. That's what I did. I'm going to commit all those changes, and that's good. Now I could put it up to GitHub, but I'm not going to do that because I want to show you that you can make multiple commits and only push one time, and that's okay too, right? Let's do that. So I committed this change locally, but not on GitHub. All right, let's go to the next one. So I did my save file dialog. That's great, but here's the problem. When I run my code now, right? I mean, I still only load my whatever file that I saved, my in student.txt. I want to give the user an option to load whatever file was saved. So it's going to have to be done here with this little thing, which we haven't configured yet, right? Let's configure it. So in mainform.cs, I need some changes. One, in my file open, let's double click here. It creates a new event, open tool strip menu item, right? Here it is. And what I want to do is in my main form design, I also want to select my open icon here. And if I go to properties, and if I look at my events, I can point to the same open tool strip menu item event. So we're using a shared event handler, not an individual one. I don't want to do different event handlers for these things. I can use the same one. Are you with me? Again, all I did was point this one. I created a new one for this one, or this one I mean, which is file open. And then just this one is going to the same one. So this is going to this one, open tool strip menu item, right? So what I want to do here is all the stuff I did inside my student info form. I want to do the same stuff that I did here in my activate. I want to do that over there. But I also want to use my file dialog, right? I don't want to hard code it like this. So a couple things. Let's pull this stuff over there first. So I want to pull all this over. All right, so all this, even this last part, which I'm going to send this back. So again, you can see I'm going to do a try catch. Actually, I don't need this part. See this part right here? This part's relating only to this form, right? It's not for everything. This is just my labels, and I'm taking stuff from my student class and dumping it into my labels. That's what I'm doing here. Okay, so let's just grab this stuff actually. Right here. So I'm going to cut this out. I'm leaving this stuff behind because that's okay to leave behind here. And I'm going back to my main form, and in here I'm pasting. So this will do all the opening stuff, but again what I want to do is I want to incorporate my new open file dialog, right? So just like I did before, I'll do it again. This is another time to look at the same thing. I'm going to configure, right, the file dialog. I'm going to open the file dialog, right? Those two things. So my configuration is going to be identical to this one. So I might as well just copy paste for a second. Actually, let's just copy paste up to here. And then I'll change the names. Now when I start copy pasting, guys, you know what that means, right? It means that there's a good case for a method. We're not going to do that here. But instead of student save file dialog, I want to use student open file dialog. Student open file dialog. Now if it's giving me an error, right, that means I've named it wrong. Here. Student student open file. See, it's a mistake. Let's go to properties and rename it so that it's proper here. Student. I have to name it properly. It was my bad. But now it works. So student open file dialog is what I want to replace this stuff with, because it's an open file dialog, not a closed file dialog. Look, it's the exact same thing because I still need a default file name, right? I still need to go into the current directory, and I still need the same filter. It's the exact same filter. So those things are the same. And this is the same too, right? When I go here and I open file dialog, it's going to show the dialog. And now, depending on my results, if my results is not equal to dialog result.cancel, then what I want to do is this stuff, all this in my try catch block. So I'm going to take all the stuff in my try catch block now, cut it, and put it inside here. So why is that? Because what this does is it says, okay, well, if the user wants to open, right, and the result is not a cancel result, then try to open it up. And instead of being a hard-coded value with student.txt, replace this with student open file dialog.file name. And that's the only change. One more thing. When I finish opening, it's got to go somewhere. Right now, it's not going anywhere. It's going into my class. But I want to show it somehow. And what I want to do is I want to go to the next file, the next student info form. I want to go there. So I can do it like this. I can say that, okay, when I'm finished opening everything and we're good, then at the bottom of this, I want to go to the next button, click event, and I want to patch in my sender and my my arguments. And this is going to send me to the next button. Why? Because my next button, which is way up here somewhere, this one, handles the event to go to the next form. It shows my form and hides this one, right? So all I'm doing is I'm calling it explicitly from here, right? So the user doesn't have to click next anymore when it comes to opening. He can still click next to see the selection he chose. But if I want to open, it's going to open right into that other form. Okay, let's try this out and see if it works. So I'm going to try that out, open it up. And again, we see this. I've already saved my file. Let's open my file. I'm going to click the open button now. And I'm going to open up tom.txt and press open. It's going to take me to the next form. It's going to show me the form. Make sense? All right. So far, so good. However, let's test it one more time. Let's test it further. Let's do one more further test. So again, we're opening it up. And, okay, I said open up Tom. Let's save another one. Let's save something else. Let's save Peter Parker. So save. Let's try another test. Peter.txt. Save. It says file saved. Fantastic. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Open. And I'm going to open Peter.txt. But first, let's click on something else, like Tom. Let's make sure that it's going to Peter. So File, Open. I want to open Peter. And press Open. It's going to take us to Peter. So all of it works now. I'm pretty happy with the way it works, and we're good to go. So this is Save File Dialog and Open File Dialog. And you're going to need that for assignment 5. All right, so assignment 5 will be using Open File Dialog and Save File Dialog. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to here, and this is a great place to put it up on GitHub. Another commit, I'm going to say added Open File Dialog support. So now this is the next one. Commit all. And now I have 2 commits. If I go to sync, you can see now that I have 2 commits. One that was made 8 minutes ago, and another one that was just made now. And if I click on push, I'm going to push both commits at the same time to GitHub. Remember, commits are just snapshots. I can make as many commits or as few commits as I want, right? However, it's good practice to make a commit every time you add a new feature. Or when you go up to get up to go to the washroom or take a break. Take a break, add a commit. Go to the washroom, add a commit. Go take your dog for a walk, get a commit going, right? Why? So something doesn't happen, like your computer doesn't fail to, stop working or something weird. Okay, so this is kind of good practice. Let's take a look at GitHub. Remember, in GitHub, you can always look at your GitHub repo right here. If I click on Home on Team Explorer, I can click on the GitHub repo. And you can see now what it looks like. It'll bring it up for you. It should. And if you notice, there is stuff that happened 7 days ago, some stuff that happened a minute ago. If I click in there, you can see that there's a mix of different things. 7 days, 5 days, 1 minute, and so on. This is not wrong. What this is saying is we have a code base, and every time we do a commit, we are modifying our code base, but only modifying the files that you've changed, right? The files that haven't changed, they're the same files that were from 7 days ago when we started this whole thing. Okay, so that's GitHub. Alright, so we've kind of done the easy stuff, but here's the thing. When we look at our files, and again, if I was to look at my files, so let's just close these ones off for a second. And if I go to Solution Explorer, and if I right click on this thing, and if I open it, so if I go open file folder in File Explorer, you can see that in my bin debug folder, I have these files, right? And if I right click on peter.txt and click edit or open with my editor, which is Visual Studio Code for me, you can see that I can see the files and there's no protection, right? I mean, it's clear text. So that's a negative thing about text files, it's clear text. The other thing is, sometimes we want to use binary files because we have a large body of data, and binary files are a better compression than text files, right? So, typically. And that doesn't provide any more protection, but it's more difficult for the average user to open because it's usually in a different format, not TXT. So first, to prepare for binary file reading and writing, which is what we want to do, we need to modify our form a little bit. Okay, so if we go back to our form, main form, we have to modify this form a little bit to add some functionality. One is, we only have open and save. I want to be able to open and save binary. And notice here I have open. Let's just change the name so we can very specify. This is open text file. That's what this is. And this one is save text file. I just want to change my menu item so it says save text file. Text file. You can change it whatever you want. Be careful. You don't have to double click here. You literally just have to click once. Also, I have this little separator. I'm going to take the separator and I want to put it down here. I want to have two separators. I want to have a separator for open and save text files. And now I want to create more different types of files to open and save. So I want to make a new one, open. But instead of opening a text file, I want to open up a binary file. Open binary file. And notice this little tick mark underneath the O. You can put a little ampersand in front of the B to kind of give an idea, a hint of what the shortcut key is going to be. I want my shortcut key for my open binary file to be Control B. And the way to do that is if you click here, and if I go to Properties, and if I scroll down, you can see Shortcut Keys is here. And I can say that I want it to be Control plus B for saving a binary file or opening a binary file. Let's put this up here so we have a little section of its own for opening text files, opening binary files. And let's make another one. We'll say that we want to save a binary file, but this one will make the ampersand in front of the I, like let's say Control I. And again, what we'll do is we will change the shortcut key over here to say that it is Control and let's say use I as an example. There we go. So we click here, you can see Control I. I want to put this in the right place over here with the other one, so let's put it over here. By the way, sometimes what people do is they put open and open together and save together. But here, because there's two different types of things I'm opening and saving, it might be prudent to only to kind of group those two things together. It's really up to you. Microsoft has some words about this in terms of design. They recommend putting things together, all the opens together, all the saves together, or making a subfolder, like a menu, submenu. And you can see I can do that. If I go click here, you can say save what type. You want to save text or binary, which one you want. Here, I'm fine with this, right? And what we need to do is we need to make these two event handlers. Now, normally we could also add some other icons. However, maybe binary files aren't the most common items. Icons are really for the most common things you want to do, common operations. Maybe the most common way of doing things with text files, right? If I wanted to make my own icons, I could. I can open up this icon, modify it. It's 16 by 16 pixels, and I can add in a little B maybe for binary, right? Or I can download something from the internet for different icons that I can use here and configure them. For example, here, this is the save icon, and you can see that there's an image behind it. In this case, it's system.drawings.bitmap.save or whatever it is, but you can get your own. But I don't care about that. All I want to do is double click on this one to give me an open binary file toolstrip menu item. And then I also want to double click on the bottom one, save binary file toolstrip menu item. So I have those places to do my code. So it's like I'm doing text files, but I'm actually doing binary. And yes, I'm going to copy paste like crazy right now. And when I copy paste, in your mind you should think to yourself, there's an option here for a method or a generic, right? So let's just do it so we can make this go. So first of all, I have examples of how to open and how to save. Let's do the save one first. I'm going to copy this entire body here up until the end. Copy. I'm going to go into save and press Control V for paste. And we'll do the same thing for open. So here's my open. I'm going to copy all this. Copy all this. And then paste it in there. Okay, and you're going to say, well, Tom, what did you do? Right? Right now, the answer is not much. But let's talk about what has to change. One, whether it's opening or saving, this can't be anymore. It can't be TXT. We're going to make it DAT for data. Right? You can make it BIN or your own extension. It's up to you. I'm going to make it DAT, which means that this is going to be binary files that are going to be opening with a DAT extension, right? Or all files. Those are the options. This same format I'm going to use for saving. So again, it's going to be student.dat, like data, and this will be binary files, binary, and this will be dat. By the way, I've been writing data because this is what it is. You could also say data files instead of like binary files. That's fine. I'm just using dat as a binary file. That's one change. The other change, so this is the first change. The first change is this. So it's going to say, hey, what is it going to be called? This is for opening. Let's go back to the closing for a second, or saving. So saving looks the same. I'm still going to use the save file dialog. I mean, that's not going to change. Save file dialog is going to come. It's going to say, what binary file do you want to name this thing? That's all going to be the same. But where it changes is this, on line 227. You can see that it says stream writer. Stream writer and stream reader is for text files only. We need to make binary files. We're going to use binary reader and binary writer. That's the difference. Let's do this. So I'm going to say this. It's going to change from stream writer to binary writer. And the same thing goes here. We have to change this to binary writer. Now, you can see that this is a problem. Why? Because there is no write line. It's going to write everything in order. And in fact, if I go here, just to test out what the things are, if I didn't know, I could put output stream dot, and if I start typing write, there's only one write. And you can see that there's different options. There's 18 different overloads. And what this does is it says, okay, whatever I pass in here, it'll use implicit typing, right, to kind of find out what that data type is, and then that's the type it's going to write. We want to write strings. That's the easiest thing. So write is enough. So instead of write line, we're going to change this to write, which satisfies the requirements. So I need to change that when it comes to writing. The other thing I need to do when it comes to cleaning up is I need to flush the stream for binary. Yes?
Do we have to use any separator?
Sorry?
Do we have to use any separator between the computers?
No. It's going to have its own separator. When you use string, when it detects a string, binary is going to add a separator for how big the string is on its own. So when you read it in, it's going to say, ah, I see. Because take a look what it says here. It says, automatically it knows the string. It says, writes a length prefixed string, which means it's going to detect how long the string is, write a little integer character, how long it is, and then write the string. So then when you read it back in, it's going to say, ah, this string is this long. And then read it back in this many times, each character, right? But good question. That means you understand, because it's going to read the entire line, right? And how is it going to know how to stop, right? So this is the reading part, and notice it's exactly the same, except we're going to change the message box. It's going to say binary file save, just to make it a little different, and then saving binary file, sure. Everything else is exactly the same. And one more thing we're going to do, because we're going to do both of them, save and load. Let's load the binary file up here. All right, so this is the open file dialog. This is exactly the same, except it can't be stream reader. It's going to be binary reader. So let's change this to binary reader. And this is binary reader over here. And now, here's where we're getting some trouble. What is there a read? What is it? Let me just see what it is. So if you look at it, we can say that input stream, let's try it out. And then we have read. Oh wow, we have a bunch of reads. In fact, there's read boolean. What we need is read string, because what this does is it says it reads a string from a current stream. The string is prefixed with the length, which is exactly what we did from the other one. We want the same way of doing it, so we're going to read string. That's what we're going to do. Again, some minor details here. So this will be read string, and so will all the other ones. So read string, read string, read string, read string. Notice again, when we save the student ID, we're saving it as a string here. So again, further down, we're saving it as a string, toString, and we're reading it in as a string, but converting it to an integer, right? So that way, always we're dealing with strings in this case. Could we write it as an integer? Absolutely. But I found that we have some weird, funky things happening. When you write it as an integer, it becomes bytes, and you have to tell it what kind of integer to write, an int32, and then read it back in as an int32. It's just easier to do it as a string, yes. Yeah, it's far easier to do it as... It is easier, but then at the end, you have to think about what you're really doing. When you write binary, you're writing bytes. Doesn't matter, right? In fact, from a C++ perspective, you do a cast, right? Reinterpret cast. What you're going to do is you're going to reinterpret cast everything to bytes, send everything to bytes, and then read everything back in as bytes. Same thing you're doing here, except in C# you're masking what's really happening because it's just easier for the user. C#, remember, we're writing at a higher level than C++. C++, lower level, right? Here we have a lot easier to do stuff and less error prone than C++. That's the advantage. Okay, and fairly good performance too. All right, so here we've got everything we need. We've done reading. Here's reading, and we did writing. Now we got to check and see if it works. Let's see if it works. Okay, so again, I'm gonna run the code. So remember what we do. First we write, then we test, then we commit. That's what we do, right? If you don't do it in that order, if you like write it, commit it, and then test it, and then if it's wrong, you have to write it again and do another commit, it's a waste of time. I mean, everyone does things differently. This is my process. All right, so I want to write Tom, but I want to write it to, I can't use these ones anymore. I want to go File, Save Binary File. So it's going to bring up the open file dialog, the save file dialog. It's going to save as, and it says DAT files. Notice that nothing comes up here. There are no DAT files yet. What about all files? All files comes up. That's good. So I want to write this as the tom.dat file. So tom.dat, and then save. It's going to say, hey, saving binary file saved. Excellent. Now I want to open my binary file. So open binary file. It's only showing tom.dat. And if I click onto that and press open, it's going to open me up here. To test this, let's save another one. Let's save Nancy Drew. So File, Save Binary File. We're going to save Nancy. By the way, if you really want to get fancy, you know you have access to the text file, right? You have access data. When you click on your data grid view, you have access to the first name. You could create your own file name based on the text file you're clicking on, right? For example, if I'm clicking on Nancy, I have file first name and last name. I have access to that in my student class. So I could create the file name for you to suggest another file name as opposed to student, right? I'm not going to do that here, but you could do it. Save. And that saved that file, and now I'm going to click on Tom and press open, and we're going to open up, oops, that's the wrong one. I'm going to press open binary file. It's only going to show these two. I'm going to click Nancy and press open, and it should show me Nancy. So we're good to go. Yes?
Are you going to show how to treat, like, if you select all of the files, like if you were to be open from text files, if you be open of that,
Can I select all these?
No, you select all files from the bottom.
Oh, yes.
And then you select that file.
That would be a bad thing. That would be an error, right?
Are you going to show how to treat
Yes, what you can do, well, okay, so what's the error that we're going to get? Are we going to get an error, first of all? So I'm trying to open, but I'm opening a text file, but I'm loading up a, let me try this again. So here, let me show you. I want to use this one, but I want to open a data file instead, all right? So how does that work? So if I go, okay, I want to open up the data file, so I go all files, and let's go open up a tom.dat. What happens? What kind of error am I going to get? I'm going to get this. And it tells me an unhandled exception of type system.format exception occurred. We handle the error, and if we, in our try catch, when we open, we do a try catch for open, so for format exception. And then we can just give an error to the user. Instead of trying to open, we can say, wrong file type. Please open up the right file type or whatever. Some kind of feedback to the user. So if you wanted to do that, because you're asking, not because I didn't do this in any of the other classes, but remember that when we're opening, remember opening is always the biggest problem. Saving is not a big problem. Opening is a problem, right? Opening is when I go here and it says IO exception, that's one option. But I can do another one, right? I can do another catch. And my catch can be a format exception. Because we know that's the kind, we just got a format exception. We'll call it this exception as well. And we'll say that when it's a format exception, we'll do a debug.writeLine in a message box to show the error. Let's try this out. So, yes, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. Sure, you can do all kinds of, but again, we're trying to do the simplest ones for everybody, right? So here we're going to bring up this format exception, and we can also produce an error that says, so here's my exception message, and then plus something like, remember you can make this as complex as you want, \n, right? Multi-line kind of like file, comment. We can say something like, please select the appropriate file type. Okay? So first we say what the error is, format exception, and then we say what to do. Let's see if that works. So again, run. Notice I have two different exceptions. I can have as many catch statements as I want for different kinds of exceptions. I want to open, but I want to open instead of a text file, somehow I make a mistake and go here. And that's why we do the filter, to prevent some of those problems. I want to open up a dat file. It's going to bring up a message that says, error, input string was not in a correct format. Please select the appropriate file type. I won't allow you to do it. It won't break my code anymore. Now notice there's a little bit of a thing. I'd probably want to make my exception better. So maybe I want to add in a little space like this. That's probably what I was missing. I never had an error before. And notice what I did was I used a \n character, go to new line. And I can make as many of those things as I want. For example, if I want to give a little space, I can say 2 \n, right? 2 \n. So that's 2 lines down. Let's try this out again. So let's try making that error one more time for you guys, since you're asking. All right, so I'm going to open, and I want to look at all files. I want to look at the data file. I want to press open, and you can see that it says error. Input string was not in the correct format. Please select the appropriate file type. Right? We can say that, and we want to give more detail. You say you selected a text when it should have been a data, or the other way around. Okay? So sure, that's what those message boxes are so awesome, because you can make it, you customize them, and you can make them say whatever you want, and I think those are really good things. All right, so that's your error handling, and again, we could probably do that also for the open binary. Open binary can have the same problem, right? You can try to open a text file when it's a binary file, and you can be very specific. Like here, I'm saying instead of the please select the appropriate file types of the right format, I can just say error. Trying to open up a text file or data file when you have instead of a file, please open up select the text file instead. Specific, more specific. And you might also have another catch, just in case. I recommend this as well. A catch-all. Something else happened. You don't know what else, but nothing that broke your code. Another exception happened. It didn't break your code, but there's some other issue, right? And a lot of times people format these messages into message numbers. Message number 1, message number 2, message number 3. And so when you get a message 3, it means this problem. It's the wrong format. And sometimes they have a manual. You go through when your application, you go, message 3 means opened up the wrong file type. Oh my God, I opened up the wrong file type. That kind of thing. But as long as your your files or the program continues to work. Hopefully that answered your question. But yes, you could detect if you're clicking on a particular file type, you could create an event for that. It's more complex, way more complex than what we're doing, because you'd have to make almost your own custom file dialog. Because you know what? Microsoft doesn't do that. If you open up a Microsoft file dialog and click on the wrong file, it's not going to tell you it's wrong. It's going to say, it's going to let you do it. But it might give you an error saying wrong file type. Okay, so that's this part. We've done binary files now. So binary files are done. Let's add in a commit. We're going to go to changes. We're going to say added support for binary file reading and writing. Right? So commit all. And we can, this time we'll do a sync and push. Sync and push. So we've got those, that commit pushed up to our GitHub repo. All right. So we've kind of come to the point where I wanted to come with you when it comes to this. We talked about, you know, this open file dialog. You'll need that for assignment 5, right? And I wanted to cover one more thing with you today, right? Which is a little bit longer. So I can I can get rid of this for now. So remember that people have been asking me about things like, well, I want to start assignment 5, but I don't know how to convert my database. I want to import my database. How do I do that? Right? I've given you another link, and if you look up at eCentennial, right, there is a link for SQL Server Management Studio. You need to download this file. So I'm going to make a new video on this. I'm going to stop this video, but please go to eCentennial now and download. If you click on this SQL Server Management Studio, it's going to take you here to the download site. Please download and install SQL Server Management Studio on your machine. Now, here's the challenge that I'm going to tell you about, and I'm going to get back to this in the video as well. You may not be able to do this if the machine you're working on is not your own. For example, anyone not have a laptop? There might be some people that don't have a laptop. And if you don't have a laptop, maybe the computer the school laptop that you're working with doesn't have access to the file system to load SQL Server Management Studio. Or maybe you need to go and write your test in the testing center, and the testing center doesn't allow you to do that, right? You need to provision for this, guys, because you're going to need to convert this for assignment number 5. So I'll come back. I'm just going to take a short break and open up another video specifically on how to convert your file so that you can go to that video and not waste your time.